3 weeks passed slowly on Callus 4. The colonists fell back into their routines because work was easier than thinking. They farmed, they maintained equipment, they taught children, they lived. But the knowledge of what lay beneath them changed everything. Conversations were quieter. People avoided walking near Section D7. The colony felt heavier somehow, burdened by secrets that had been revealed. Jiho spent most of his time in his office, preparing for what he knew was coming. Earth would respond. They always did. And when they arrived, there would be questions, investigations, maybe even consequences for activating a classified weapon without proper authorization. He had stopped sleeping well. Every night he dreamed of the black sphere pulsing in the darkness, erasing things from existence. On the 22nd day after the attack, Sora's console lit up with incoming signals. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge. Jiho's heart jumped into his throat until Sora confirmed they were broadcasting Earth Defense Force identification codes. 17 ships, Sora reported, her voice filled with awe. 3 battlecruisers, 6 destroyers, and 8 support vessels. This is a full military fleet. For us? Mina asked. She had been spending more time in the command center, as if staying close to information would help her understand what was happening. They're hailing us, Sora said. She opened the channel. A stern face appeared on the screen. The man was in his 50s with gray hair and the insignia of an admiral on his uniform. This is Admiral Taeyong Kang of the Earth Defense Force. We're here to secure New Haven Colony. Administrator Park, please respond. Jiho stepped forward. This is Administrator Park. Colony is secure. No casualties. All systems functional. The Admiral's expression softened slightly. Good. We'll be in orbit within 2 hours. Prepare for ground teams. And Administrator Park? You did well. The channel closed. Jiho stood staring at the blank screen, unsure whether to feel relieved or more worried. A full fleet meant this was important. It meant Earth took the attack seriously. It also meant they were about to learn just how deep the secrets went. 2 hours later, 6 transport shuttles landed outside the colony. They brought engineers, scientists, security personnel, and several people in civilian clothes who had the look of intelligence officers. Admiral Kang was among them, a tall man who carried himself with the confidence of someone who had seen many battles. Jiho met him at the landing pad. They shook hands and the Admiral's grip was firm. Walk with me, Administrator. We have much to discuss. They walked through the colony's corridors while the Admiral's team spread out to their assigned tasks. Engineers headed for Section D7. Scientists went to the power systems. Security personnel began setting up equipment. The colony felt suddenly crowded after 3 years of isolation. You activated Whisper Protocol, the Admiral said. It wasn't a question, yes, sir. We were under direct attack. I followed the instructions in the sealed orders. And it worked? Completely. 3 enemy warships eliminated in 7 minutes. No damage to the colony, the Admiral nodded. Good, that's 2 successful activations now. Yours and 1 other colony. The data will be valuable. Jiho stopped walking. 2? You mean there are other colonies with these weapons? The Admiral looked at him with an expression that was almost sympathetic. Administrator Park, there are 67 colonies with experimental defense systems. Different designs, different technologies, but all based on the same principle. We're not just colonizing space. We're building a distributed defense network. The words hit Jiho like a physical blow. 67 colonies. Hundreds of thousands of people living on top of weapons they didn't know about. Why, he asked. Why hide them? Why not just build military bases? Because military bases are targets, the Admiral said simply. They're obvious. Any species planning to attack humanity would strike military targets first. But farming colonies? Research outposts? Nobody expects them to be dangerous. So when enemies attack our weakest points, they discover we don't have weak points. We have traps. They reached the command center where Mina, Daehyun, Hyunwoo, and Sora were waiting. The Admiral greeted each of them, thanking them for their service. Then he activated a holographic display that showed the entire sector. Let me explain what's been happening, the Admiral said. Humanity has been expanding into space for 80 years. In that time, we've encountered 214 alien species. Most are peaceful or at least neutral, but 36 of them are aggressive. They see us as weak because we're new, because we don't have ancient empires or massive fleets. The display showed red markers appearing across the map. These species have been testing us. Small attacks, probing our defenses, seeing how we respond. The Vren who attacked you are one of the most aggressive. They've destroyed 16 civilizations and were planning a major offensive against human space. A new set of markers appeared, showing human colonies. Earth's strategy wasn't to compete ship to ship. We couldn't win that fight. We're too new, too small, too spread out. So instead, we developed weapons that don't follow conventional rules. Weapons based on technologies we barely understand ourselves. Quantum manipulation, reality restructuring, causality violation. We built things that should be impossible, and we hid them in places nobody would look. Daehyun leaned forward. You turned us into weapons. The colonies themselves? Yes, the Admiral said, not apologizing. But understand, it was the only way to survive. If we had built conventional defenses, we would have been overwhelmed. But by making every colony potentially lethal, we created a deterrence that works. Attack any human settlement, and you might face weapons that can erase you from existence. Which colony has which weapon? Nobody knows. That uncertainty protects all of you. Mina shook her head. But we didn't choose this. We came here to farm, to build peaceful lives. You made us part of a war without asking. I know, the Admiral said quietly, and I'm sorry. But if we had asked, if we had told you, the secret would have spread. Our enemies would have learned. And the strategy only works if they believe you're helpless right up until the moment they attack. Sora spoke up, her voice small. What happened to the recording? The listening post that transmitted data before it was erased. The Admiral's expression went cold. You noticed that? Good work. Yes, the Vren got a recording. It reached their high command 4 days ago. Do you know what they did? They sued for peace immediately. Offered reparations, trade agreements, territorial concessions. They're terrified, and they're not the only ones. He changed the display to show diplomatic communications. In the last 3 weeks, 8 aggressive species have suddenly become very interested in peace talks with humanity. The word is spreading. Earth's colonies aren't soft targets. They're traps. And nobody wants to be the next species to get erased. Hyunwoo crossed his arms. So we're safe now? Because everyone's afraid of us? Safer, the Admiral corrected. Fear is a good deterrent, but it's not perfect. There will always be species desperate enough or stupid enough to attack. But yes, the galactic situation has changed dramatically. Humanity went from being seen as weak newcomers to being recognized as a civilization with weapons that violate the basic rules of warfare. Jiho thought about that. We're not conquerors, though. We don't want to dominate anyone, and that's important, the Admiral said. The older, wiser civilizations understand the difference. They've seen aggressive empires rise and fall. They recognize that we built these weapons for defense, not conquest. Several ancient species have already sent messages welcoming us to what they call the Elder Table. These are civilizations that have survived for millions of years by being too dangerous to attack. Now they see us as peers. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed this information. They had thought they were just farmers on a frozen moon. Instead, they were pieces in a galactic chess game that was far bigger than any of them had understood. What happens now? Mina asked. Now you choose, the Admiral said. Anyone who wants to transfer to another colony can do so. Earth will cover all costs. Anyone who wants to return to Earth can do that too. No questions asked, no penalties. You've served beyond what we asked of you. But if you want to stay, you can. The weapon will remain. It will be monitored remotely, but it will still be here, still protecting you. And if we stay, Jiho asked, will there be more secrets? More things you're not telling us? The Admiral shook his head. No more secrets. You've earned the truth. Anyone who stays will have full access to the classified files about the weapon and the defense network. You'll know what you're living with. Over the next few days, the Admiral's teams worked in Section D7, running diagnostics and collecting data. They interviewed everyone who had been involved in the activation. They checked the colony's systems and made minor improvements to the power grid. They were efficient and professional, treating the colonists with respect rather than as test subjects. Admiral Kang spent time walking through the colony, talking to people, listening to their concerns. He wasn't what Jiho had expected from a military commander. He was thoughtful, willing to admit uncertainty, and genuinely seemed to care about the colonists' well-being. The emergency shelters were cramped and cold, filled with frightened colonists who had been waiting for death. When Jiho announced over the communication system that the threat was gone, nobody cheered. They were too confused, too shocked. They filed out slowly, looking at the sky as if expecting to see wreckage falling. But there was nothing. Just the same stars they saw every night, cold and distant. Jiho called a colony-wide meeting in the main hall. 847 people crowded into a space meant for 500. They sat on floors, stood against walls, held their children close. Everyone wanted answers. 3 enemy warships entered our system, Jiho began. His voice echoed in the large room. They were coming to attack us. We had no way to defend ourselves with conventional weapons. He paused, choosing his words carefully. What I'm about to tell you has been classified. Earth installed a defense system in this colony 3 years ago. It's experimental technology, and I was ordered to keep it secret unless we were under direct attack. Today we were under attack. So we activated the system. It worked. The enemy ships are gone. We're safe. A woman in the crowd stood up. Her name was Yunji, and she ran the colony school. What kind of defense system? What did it do to those ships? Jiho hesitated. How could he explain something he barely understood himself? It's classified military technology. I don't have all the details, but it removed the threat without harming the colony. Where are the ships now? Someone else called out. Did they retreat? No, Jiho said. They didn't retreat. They're gone. Completely gone, the crowd murmured. Gone didn't make sense. Ships didn't just vanish. They were destroyed, they retreated, they crashed. But they didn't disappear. A man named Junho, one of the farmers, spoke up. You're telling us Earth put a secret weapon in our colony? Under our homes? And nobody thought to tell us? It was classified for security reasons, Jiho said. If our enemies knew we had defensive capabilities, they might have sent a larger force. The weapon works best when the enemy thinks we're defenseless. That's insane, Junho said. We had a right to know what was under our feet. What else hasn't Earth told us? Jiho had no answer for that. He was wondering the same thing. If Earth had hidden one weapon system, what else had they hidden? How many other colonies had secret weapons? How many colonists lived their entire lives not knowing they were sitting on top of classified military technology? Mina stood up from where she was sitting. I helped activate the weapon. So did Dahyun. We saw what it does. She looked around at the crowd. I can't explain it because I don't understand it myself. But I can tell you this. Those ships and everyone on them are gone in a way that's hard to describe. The weapon didn't destroy them. It erased them. And yes, it's frightening, but it also saved all of our lives. The crowd was quiet for a long moment. Then Yunji spoke again. Do we have to stay here? Knowing what's below us, can we request transfer to another colony? You can, Jiho said. Anyone who wants to leave can submit a transfer request. Earth will honor it, but it will take time. Ships don't come here often, and I can't guarantee any other colony is different. We might all be living on top of secret weapons and just don't know it yet. The meeting continued for another hour. Some people were angry. Some were scared. Some were oddly grateful. They argued and debated and asked questions that nobody could answer. Finally, exhausted, they dispersed back to their homes. Life had to continue, even after everything had changed. In his office, Jiho sat alone and read through the classified files that had unlocked after the weapon's activation. The information was technical and dense, filled with physics equations he couldn't understand and security classifications he had never heard of. But the basic summary was clear enough. Whisper Protocol was based on quantum manipulation of local spacetime. It created a field where the fundamental constants of physics became variable instead of fixed. Within that field, matter and energy could be convinced to forget their current configuration. The weapon didn't destroy targets. It simply revised local reality to exclude them. The files included warnings. Many warnings. The weapon was experimental. Its long-term effects on local spacetime were unknown. Repeated use in the same location could cause permanent damage to the fabric of reality. The weapon was to be used only in dire emergencies, only when the colony's survival was at stake. There was also a note about the psychological effects on the operators. Humans who activated the weapon often experienced temporal disorientation, memory issues, and philosophical distress. The note recommended psychological counseling after activation. It also mentioned that some operators had requested memory suppression to forget what they had done. Jiho understood that impulse. Part of him wanted to forget. Wanted to go back to yesterday when he was just a stressed administrator trying to keep crops growing and people fed. But he couldn't forget. None of them could. They would carry this knowledge for the rest of their lives. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Mina entered without waiting for permission. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. "No," Jiho admitted. She sat down across from him. "I keep thinking about those ships. The people on them. They had families, probably. They thought they were just following orders, doing their duty, and we erased them. Not killed them, erased them, like they never existed. They were going to kill us," Jiho said. "They weren't coming to negotiate or talk. They were coming to destroy the colony. We defended ourselves." "I know," Mina said. "I understand that logically. But it doesn't make me feel better. We didn't just kill them. We removed them from the universe. That feels different somehow, more final." Jiho didn't have a response. She was right. It did feel different. Traditional weapons killed people, but those people had still existed. They had still lived and died and left behind evidence of their existence. Whisper Protocol removed all of that. It was clean and absolute and terrifying. "Are you going to stay?" he asked, "or request a transfer?" Mina thought about it. "I don't know yet. I've built a life here. The crops, the hydroponic systems, the colonists I've taught to farm. It's hard to walk away from that. But every time I walk past Section D7 now, I'm going to know what's down there. That knowledge changes everything." They sat together in silence, two people trying to process something that couldn't be processed. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. Life in New Haven continued, but it would never quite be the same. In the maintenance center, Dae-hyun was running diagnostics on the colony's power systems. The weapon had consumed 90% of their power reserves during activation, but now those reserves were refilling on their own. According to the readings, the weapon was drawing energy from quantum vacuum fluctuations, pulling power directly from the underlying structure of space-time itself. It was self-sustaining, self-powering. It would always be ready, always waiting, always able to activate if the colony was threatened again. The thought should have been comforting. Instead, it made Dae-hyun feel sick. Hyun-woo found him there, staring at the power grid displays. "You okay?" the security chief asked. "No," Dae-hyun said honestly. "I spent years in Earth's military. I know weapons. I know how they work, what they do, the damage they cause. But this is something else. This is like someone found a way to hack reality itself. Earth scientists must be smarter than we thought," Hyun-woo said. "Or more desperate," Dae-hyun replied. "You don't build a weapon like this unless you're terrified. Unless you think conventional weapons won't be enough. Earth knows something we don't. They know there are threats out there that would destroy us, so they built weapons that don't just destroy back. They built weapons that erase." Hyun-woo leaned against the wall. "Makes you wonder how many other colonies have these things. How many other secret weapons Earth has scattered across the galaxy." "Probably all of them," Dae-hyun said. "That's what I would do. Put a different experimental weapon in each colony. Test them all. See which ones work best. We're not just colonists. We're test subjects." It was a cynical view, but neither of them could deny it made sense. Earth wouldn't put all their weapons in one place. They would spread them out, hide them in unsuspecting colonies, and wait to see which designs worked when the time came. In the communications center, Sora was trying to send a message to Earth. The enemy jamming had stopped when the ships were erased, but the colony's long-range transmitter had limited power. It would take 3 weeks for any message to reach Earth, traveling at faster-than-light speeds through the communication relay network. She composed a simple report. New Haven colony attacked by 3 hostile warships. Defense system activated successfully. All colonists safe. Enemy vessels eliminated. Request further instructions and clarification on defense protocols. She didn't mention how the enemy was eliminated. She didn't describe what she had seen on the sensors. She just reported the facts. Let Earth decide what to tell her. As she waited for the message to send, she noticed something odd in the sensor logs. There was a signal, very faint, at the extreme edge of the system. It had been there during the attack, but she had been too focused on the enemy ships to notice it. Commander Raktos felt something strange happening to his ship. At first, he thought it was just his imagination. The lights seemed dimmer, but when he looked directly at them, they were fine. The air felt thinner, but his suit's sensors showed normal pressure. Time itself seemed to stretch and compress randomly, seconds lasting too long and then snapping by too fast. His crew were experiencing it too. The tactical officer kept touching his console as if he couldn't quite remember how to use it. The sensor officer was staring at her screens with confusion, like the data she was reading was written in a language she used to know but had forgotten. "What's happening to us?" Raktos demanded. Nobody answered. Nobody could answer. They were trying to understand something that couldn't be understood with normal thinking. On the view screen, the frozen moon of Calais 4 was still visible, but something about it looked wrong now. The stars around it were in slightly different positions. Or maybe they had always been in those positions and Raktos was just remembering incorrectly. His memory felt slippery, like trying to hold water in his claws. The first ship, the one closest to the colony, began to change. At first it was subtle. A section of the hull seemed less solid, less real, like looking at something through dirty glass. Then the effect spread. The ship's outline became blurry. The metal started to lose its color, fading to gray, then to something that wasn't quite a color at all. Inside that ship, the crew were experiencing something impossible. They could see themselves from the outside. They could feel their hearts beating, but also feel the moment before their hearts beat, and the moment after. Past, present, and future were happening simultaneously. One crew member reached for a control panel and saw her hand pass through it. Except it didn't pass through, it was never there to begin with. But also, it had always been there. The contradiction broke her mind before she could scream. Raktos watched in horror as the first ship began to disappear. Not explode, not break apart. Just slowly, methodically stop existing. It was as if the universe was forgetting it had ever been there. The metal, the crew, the energy in its power core, all of it was being erased like words wiped from a page. "Reverse course," he screamed. "Emergency faster than light jump."
"Get us out of here now!"
His navigation officer tried. His fingers moved across the console, entering the commands for an emergency jump. But the faster-than-light drive didn't respond. When the officer checked the status, he made a sound of confusion and fear. According to the system, the drive had never been installed. But that was impossible. They had used it to get here. They had jumped into this system only minutes ago, except now the ship's computer insisted they hadn't. The drive simply didn't exist. It never had existed. The ship's construction records showed it was built without one. The maintenance logs showed no service history for a component that wasn't there. The second ship was experiencing the same thing. So was Raktos's flagship. All three vessels were caught in something that wasn't a weapon in any traditional sense. It was more like reality itself had been given new instructions about what was and wasn't allowed to exist in this region of space. Raktos looked at his claws and saw them flickering. Solid, then transparent, then solid again. He tried to remember his name, but the memory slipped away. He had a name. He was sure of that. He was a commander of the Vren Dominion. He had been born on a world whose name he couldn't quite recall. He had a family, maybe, or did he? Had he ever existed at all? The view screen showed the colony below, unchanged and untouched. The humans hadn't fired a single shot. They hadn't launched any missiles or energy beams. They had simply made it so that the Vren fleet was never going to be here. The difference was subtle but absolute. In Section D7, the black sphere was pulsing rhythmically now, like a dark heart beating at the center of the chamber. Jiho, Mina, and Daehyun could feel each pulse in their bones. The air around them felt thick and heavy, pressing down on them from all directions. The pylons were glowing with a light that hurt to look at directly, and the quantum processors were working so hard they were starting to smoke. "We need to leave," Daehyun said. His voice sounded strange, echoed, like he was speaking from very far away even though he was standing right next to them. This room isn't safe, but they couldn't move. Something about the sphere was holding them in place. Not physically, but in some other way. It was as if leaving the room would be breaking a rule that the universe itself was enforcing. The screen above the control panel was displaying data, but none of it made sense. Numbers that changed too fast to read. Equations that included symbols that didn't exist in human mathematics. Graphs showing relationships between concepts that couldn't be graphed. And through it all, a simple progress bar slowly filling up. Target erasure in progress, the screen read. Estimated completion 90 seconds. Mina grabbed Jiho's arm. "What did we do? What is this thing?" "I don't know," Jiho said. His voice was shaking. The message said to trust it. To trust the weapon. "This isn't a weapon," Mina said. "Weapons destroy things. This is something else." She was right. Whatever Whisper Protocol was, it operated on principles that had nothing to do with conventional warfare. It wasn't applying force. It wasn't generating heat or pressure or radiation. It was doing something to the fundamental rules that governed reality, rewriting them in a way that excluded the enemy ships from existence. Above them, Commander Raktos had his final moment of clarity. For just an instant, the confusion lifted and he understood what was happening. The humans hadn't built a weapon. They had found a way to weaponize entropy itself, the natural tendency of the universe to forget things that didn't matter. They had turned that principle into something focused and deliberate. His last thought was simple. We attacked the wrong species. Then he was gone. Not dead, not destroyed. Simply gone. The atoms that had made up his body forgot they were supposed to be arranged as a Vren warrior. The energy that had powered his mind forgot it was supposed to be consciousness. The very concept of Commander Raktos was removed from local space-time, and the universe adjusted accordingly. The same thing happened to every crew member on all 3 ships. Hundreds of Vren warriors suddenly and completely erased. They didn't die because death implied having existed in the first place. They just stopped being part of reality's current configuration. The ships themselves followed. Metal forgot how to be metal. Hull plating forgot it was supposed to be solid. Power cores forgot they were supposed to contain energy. Everything came apart at the most basic level, not breaking but simply ceasing to be assembled. In 90 seconds it was over. Where 3 Vren warships had been, there was now only empty space, no debris field, no energy signatures, no evidence they had ever existed except for some minor quantum echoes that were already fading. Even the radiation their engines had produced was being retroactively removed. The universe editing its recent history to maintain consistency. The black sphere in section D7 pulsed one final time, then went still. The pressure in the air lifted. The pylons stopped glowing. The quantum processors powered down. The screen displayed a new message. Threat eliminated. Whisper protocol entering standby mode. Jiho, Mina, and Daehyun stood in silence, staring at the sphere. They could move again, but none of them wanted to. What they had just witnessed, what they had just done, was beyond their ability to process. They had activated something that shouldn't exist. They had used a weapon that violated every principle of warfare they understood. We need to check if it worked, Daehyun finally said. His voice was quiet, subdued. We need to know if the ships are gone. They made their way back through the corridors to the command center. The journey felt longer than it should have, as if the distance had changed while they were gone. When they arrived, Sora was still at her station, staring at her screens with wide eyes. Report, Jiho said automatically, falling back on procedure, because it was easier than thinking about what they had done. Sora turned to look at him. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. They're gone. All 3 ships. They just vanished. One moment they were there, the next they weren't. No explosion, no debris. They're just gone. Hyunwoo was checking the defense grid. Our systems show no damage. Whatever happened, it happened to them, not to us. The colony is intact. Mina sat down heavily in a chair. We killed them. We erased them. We defended ourselves, Jiho said, but his voice lacked conviction. Was it defense if the enemy simply stopped existing? Was it justice if they never had a chance to retreat or surrender? Sora was going through her sensor logs. There's something else. The quantum signature of local space has changed. It's subtle, but it's there, like someone rewrote a small part of reality's code. The effects are already fading, but for a few minutes, this entire region was operating under different rules than the rest of the universe. Daehyun walked to the window and looked out at the frozen landscape of Callus 4. The wind was still howling. The ice was still there. Nothing had changed on the surface. But somewhere high above, 3 ships and their crews had been removed from existence. Somewhere, families would wait for warriors who would never return, except maybe they wouldn't wait, because maybe those warriors had never left in the first place. The command center was completely silent as Jiho opened the black case. Everyone stared at the Earth Defense Force emblems on its surface. Those symbols meant military. They meant secrets. They meant this colony was more than anyone had been told. What are you talking about? Mina asked, her voice tight. We're farmers. This is an agricultural settlement. Jiho pulled out the message cylinder and the encrypted data chips. His hands were still shaking. 3 years ago, when I was assigned here as administrator, they gave me this. They told me never to open it unless the colony was under direct attack. They said I would understand when the time came. He pressed his thumb against the cylinder. It recognized his biometric signature and opened, projecting a holographic message into the air. A stern-faced Earth military officer appeared, speaking in a flat, official tone. Administrator Park, if you are viewing this message, your colony is under attack. New Haven was selected as a testing site for classified defense technology. In Section D7 of your underground facility, you will find a weapon system designated Whisper Protocol. This system is autonomous and requires activation by 3 senior colony officers using biometric authorization. Once activated, it will engage any hostile forces within range. You have full authority to activate this system if the colony's survival is at stake. Trust the weapon. It will protect you. The message ended. Everyone in the command center stared at Jiho. There's a weapon here, Hyunwoo said. What kind of weapon? I don't know, Jiho admitted. The message doesn't say, but apparently Earth thought we needed protection. Daehyun moved to his console and pulled up the colony's power grid. Section D7. I've been trying to figure out that power drain for 2 years. It's pulling enough energy to run a small city. He looked up at Jiho. You're telling me there's been a military weapon under our feet this whole time? I didn't know what it was, Jiho said. I thought it was just backup power systems or research equipment. They told me to forget about it unless we were attacked. And now we're being attacked, Mina said quietly. Sora's console beeped. 12 minutes until weapons range. The ships are definitely hostile. I'm reading energy signatures consistent with heavy plasma cannons. If they fire on us, our shields won't last 10 seconds. Hyunwoo turned to Jiho. We need to evacuate. Get everyone into the deep shelters. The shelters won't protect us from orbital bombardment, Daehyun said. If they want to kill us, they will. We have nowhere to run. Then we use this weapon, Mina said, pointing at the case. Whatever it is, it's our only chance. Jiho looked down at the authorization codes. It requires 3 senior officers. 3 different biometric signatures entered simultaneously. That's me, and I need 2 of you. I'll do it, Daehyun said immediately. Mina hesitated, then nodded. Me too, Hyunwoo grabbed Jiho's arm. Wait, we don't know what this weapon does. What if it's dangerous? What if it destroys the colony along with the ships? Then we die either way, Jiho said. But at least we die fighting back. He handed the authorization codes to Daehyun and Mina. Section D7, we need to go now. The 3 of them ran through the colony's corridors. Around them, colonists were rushing to the shelters carrying children and emergency supplies. Nobody knew what was happening. They just knew they were under attack. Fear was thick in the air like smoke. Section D7 was in the deepest level of the facility, far below the residential areas and farming bays. The corridor leading to it was dark and cold. At the end stood a massive door with a biometric scanner. Jiho had walked past this door 100 times and never thought much about it. Now as he approached, he felt a strange pressure in the air, like the space around the door was heavier than it should be. He placed his hand on the scanner. It glowed green. Daehyun and Mina did the same. The door hissed and began to open, revealing a chamber beyond. The room was huge, far bigger than it should be based on the colony's layout. It stretched away into darkness, and the walls seemed to curve in ways that hurt to look at. In the center of the chamber, suspended in the air by nothing visible, was a perfect black sphere about 2 meters across. It didn't reflect light. It didn't seem to absorb light either. It just existed in a way that felt wrong, like looking at a hole in reality itself. Around the sphere were dozens of machines covered in cables and cooling systems. Quantum processors, if Daehyun's guess was right. And anchored to the floor in a circle were massive pylons that hummed with power. The air in the room tasted like metal and electricity. What is that thing? Mina whispered. I have no idea, Jiho said. But I think we're about to find out. In the center of the room was a control panel with 3 hand-shaped indentations. Above it, a screen displayed a simple message. Place hands to activate Whisper Protocol. Warning, activation is irreversible. System will engage all hostile targets within effective range. Effective range, Daehyun read. It doesn't say what that means. Sora's voice came through Jiho's communication device. 7 minutes until weapons range. The enemy ships are charging weapons. They're going to fire the moment they're in position. Jiho looked at Mina and Daehyun. Last chance to back out. Neither of them moved. They all knew there was no other choice. On 3, Jiho said. 1, 2, 3. They placed their hands on the panel simultaneously. The biometric scanners glowed. The black sphere pulsed once like a heartbeat. The lights in the chamber flickered. And then from deep within the sphere came a sound that was not a sound. It was more like a whisper that bypassed their ears and spoke directly into their minds. The screen changed. Whisper protocol activated. Target acquisition in progress. Estimated time to engagement 7 minutes, 7 minutes. The same amount of time until the enemy ships reached weapons range. The weapon had calculated everything perfectly. Far above, in the cold space around Callus 4, Commander Rakdos sat in the command chair of his warship. He was a Vren, a species that had conquered 16 star systems and destroyed 30 lesser civilizations. His people were reptilian with thick scales and powerful claws. They believed in strength. They believed in dominance. And they believed humans were weak. This attack had been planned for months. New Haven was isolated, poorly defended, and far from Earth's main fleets. Destroying it would send a message to humanity. Stay in your own space or we will erase you system by system. Rakdos watched the frozen moon on his view screen with satisfaction. His sensors showed no ships launching, no defense platforms activating, no shields powering up. The humans were doing nothing. They were just sitting there waiting to die. Pathetic, he said to his tactical officer. I expected at least some resistance. Perhaps they hoped to surrender, the officer suggested. We are not accepting surrenders. We are making examples. Rakdos checked the weapons status. 6 minutes until firing range. His 3 ships carried enough firepower to crack that moon in half if necessary, but he would be merciful. A few precision strikes to the colony's power core would kill everyone instantly. No suffering. Just a quick end, his sensor officer spoke up. Commander, I'm detecting a gravitational anomaly near the colony. What kind of anomaly? Unknown. It's small but growing. Space itself appears to be distorting. Rakdos frowned. Is it a weapon? I don't know. I've never seen readings like this before. Can it harm us? The officer hesitated. I don't think so. We're still too far away. But Commander, the math doesn't make sense. The distortion is affecting local space-time in ways that shouldn't be possible. Rakdos dismissed it with a wave of his clawed hand. Probably their power system's failing. Humans always use unstable technology. Ignore it and focus on the attack run. But as the minutes passed, the distortion grew stronger. At 4 minutes to weapons range, every sensor on all 3 Vren ships began screaming warnings. The gravitational anomaly was expanding. Radiation levels were spiking. Quantum decoherence was spreading through local space like a virus. Commander, we should pull back, the sensor officer said, fear creeping into his voice. Something is very wrong here. We're not retreating from a farming colony, Rakdos snapped. Maintain course. At 3 minutes, his tactical officer grabbed the edge of his console. Commander, the lead ship is reporting shield failures. No, wait, the shields aren't failing. They're saying the shields were never activated. But they were. I watched them activate. This doesn't make sense. Rakdos stood from his chair, his instincts finally screaming danger. Evasive maneuvers. Get us out of here, but it was too late. All 3 ships had crossed into the effective range of Whisper Protocol, and the weapon had already made its decision about their existence. In Section D7, Jiho, Mina, and Daehyun watched the screen as numbers counted down. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. 1 minute. The black sphere pulsed with each passing second, and reality around them felt thin, like paper about to tear. What's it doing? Mina asked. I don't know, Jiho whispered. But I can feel it. Something terrible is about to happen. The countdown reached 0. The sphere went completely still, and somewhere above them in the cold darkness of space, 3 warships simply stopped existing. The wind on Callus 4 never stopped howling. It cut through the valley like a knife made of ice, screaming against the reinforced windows of New Haven Colony. Inside the administration building, Jiho Park sat at his desk, staring at another month of disappointing crop reports. The underground farms were producing enough to keep everyone fed, but barely. They had come to this frozen moon hoping for a peaceful life away from Earth's crowded cities. What they got was endless cold and constant struggle. Jiho rubbed his tired eyes. He was 42 years old and looked 50. The stress of managing 847 lives on this ice ball was aging him fast. Before coming here, he had been a logistics officer for Earth's colonial expansion program. He knew how to manage supplies, coordinate schedules, and keep people alive. But he never wanted to be in charge. He just wanted a quiet place to retire. The door opened and Mina Choi walked in carrying a tablet. She was the head of agriculture, a woman who could make plants grow in places where nothing should survive. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same dirt-stained work clothes she always did. Mina didn't believe in wasting time on appearances. "The Western hydroponics bay is failing again," she said, setting the tablet on his desk. "We need new heating coils, but we don't have the materials to make them." Jiho sighed. "Can we patch them?" "We've been patching them for 6 months. Eventually, patches stop working." She sat down in the chair across from him. "We need to request a supply ship from Earth. The next scheduled ship isn't for 4 months. Then we need to request an emergency delivery." Jiho knew she was right. But emergency deliveries cost money the colony didn't have. Every credit they spent was a credit they couldn't use for something else. He made a note on his own tablet. "I'll send the request today." Mina stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Jiho, why did they put a colony out here? This moon is barely habitable. There are 100 better places in this sector." It was a question she had asked before. It was a question many colonists asked. Jiho gave her the same answer he always did. Earth wanted to spread humanity across as many systems as possible, even the difficult places. She looked at him for a long moment as if trying to decide whether to believe him. Then she nodded and left. Jiho returned to his reports, but his mind was elsewhere. Mina's question bothered him because he didn't have a real answer. Not one he could tell her anyway. There were things about New Haven that didn't make sense. The colony's power generation was far more than they needed for farming and heating. Section D7 of the underground facility was marked as unused storage. But it drew more power than the entire residential district, and the defense grid around the colony was outdated and weak, almost like they wanted to appear defenseless. He pushed the thoughts away. Some questions were better left unasked. Across the colony in the maintenance center, Daehyun Lee was working on one of the old plasma turrets. The weapon was designed to shoot down asteroids and space debris, not military ships. It was slow, weak, and barely functional. Daehyun had been trying to upgrade it for months, but he didn't have the parts or the authorization. He was a big man with rough hands and a face that rarely smiled. Before coming to New Haven, he had been an engineer in Earth's military. He knew weapons. He knew defense systems. And he knew that this colony's defenses were a joke. 5 plasma turrets that couldn't hit a moving target, 5 security guards with training rifles. If anyone attacked them, they would die in minutes. "Chief, you've been staring at that turret for an hour," said a voice behind him. Daehyun turned to see Hyunwoo Nam, the colony's security chief. Hyunwoo was younger, maybe 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had been a military police officer on Earth before volunteering for colony duty. He was good at his job, but there wasn't much for a security chief to do on a peaceful farming moon. "I'm trying to improve the targeting system," Daehyun said. "But it's like trying to make a rock fly." Hyunwoo leaned against the wall. "You think we'll ever need it?" "I hope not. But if we do, this thing won't save us." The two men stood in silence for a moment. They both knew the truth that most colonists didn't want to think about. They were alone out here. Earth was weeks away. If something happened, they were on their own. In the communications center, Sora Kim was monitoring the long-range sensors. She was 26 years old, the youngest department head in the colony. She had bright eyes and an optimistic attitude that annoyed some of the older colonists. But she was good at her job. She kept the colony connected to Earth, managed the data relays, and watched the sensors for any signs of trouble. Today, the sensors showed nothing. Empty space, distant stars, the usual background radiation of the universe. It was boring work, but Sora didn't mind. Boring meant safe. Boring meant everyone could focus on farming and building and living their lives. She was about to take a break when something flickered on her screen. A small blip at the edge of the system. Probably nothing. Space was full of rocks and ice chunks that registered on sensors. But standard procedure said to log everything, so she marked it in the system and assigned it a tracking number. The blip moved. Sora sat up straighter. Rocks didn't move like that. They drifted in predictable orbits. This thing was accelerating. She ran a spectral analysis and felt her stomach drop. The signature was wrong. It wasn't natural. She opened a second scan and found 2 more blips. All 3 were moving toward the colony. All 3 had engine signatures. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She hit the emergency alert button. Throughout the colony, red lights began to flash. A calm automated voice announced, "Unidentified vessels approaching. All personnel report to stations." "This is not a drill." Jiho was in his office when the alert sounded. He grabbed his coat and ran toward the command center. By the time he arrived, Daehyun and Hunwoo were already there, along with Mina and several other department heads. Sora stood at her station, her face pale. "Report," Jiho said. "3 ships," Sora said, her voice shaking. "Unknown design. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the system's edge and are heading straight for us. They'll be in weapons range in 18 minutes. The room went silent. 18 minutes. Jiho felt something cold settle in his chest. This was it, the scenario they all feared but never truly believed would happen. "Can we contact them?" he asked. Sora shook her head. "I've tried every frequency. They're jamming our communications. We can't even send a message to Earth." Hyunwoo spoke up. "If they're jamming us, they're not here to talk. They're here to attack." Jiho looked around the room at the frightened faces. These were farmers and engineers and teachers. They weren't soldiers. They had no warships, no weapons, no way to fight back. They were about to die, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. But then he remembered something. Something he had been told 3 years ago when he first arrived on Callus 4. Something he had tried very hard to forget. "Everyone stay here," he said quietly. "I need to check something." He walked to his office, his heart pounding. He opened the locked cabinet behind his desk and pulled out a black metal case marked with Earth Defense Force emblems. His hands were shaking as he entered the unlock code. Inside was a message cylinder and a set of authorization codes. The message was simple. "If the colony is under attack, activate Whisper Protocol. Trust the system." Jiho stared at the message for a long moment. Then he picked up the case and returned to the command center. "I need to tell you all something," he said. "New Haven isn't just a farming colony.